podcast. I am Ryan Anderson, and joining me to my left, as always, is the Skype man, Hype Man,
Brad Learman.
What's up, man?
Nothing too much, man.
For this episode, we have a lot to talk about right at the top. First of which, I want to apologize because we actually had another scoop that we were going to break last week. I want to thank everyone who shared and spread the word because we dropped that leak and it caused a lot of controversy. Everyone was talking about the Joker, then it got shut down, and then they brought it back just yesterday, and it became this whole thing. So it was very cool to talk about it. Again, take these scoops that we've been dropping with a grain of salt. Everything else is real news, and we'd like to stick to that. So for this week, I wanted to start at the top of the show talking about some things that have been going on with social media with our stuff. First of which, our 30 Minutes of Life downloads that we've been doing. We dropped we did 30 Minutes of Life, which was very well downloaded. And then we did 2 Reacts episodes, and you guys just showed up with numbers, and just wanted to say thank you for that. Speaking of numbers, we actually got our hands on this image from Tom Hardy, kind of piggybacking off of our Venom Reacts there, because he's now going to be doing Al Capone. And I threw it up on Twitter, and apparently everyone's been forced to take the image down, but no one said anything to us, so we left it up there. And it's like over 100 hits right now, and again, no one said anything, so as long as that's the case, we're going to keep it up. So glad that you guys like it and are sharing it with everyone and commenting on it. Also, I wanted to quickly mention that if you get a chance, please read Robert Venditti's Hawkman series right now. Hawkman is so good. As a personal fan of the comic, I really love what they're doing with him. And also in terms of Robert Venditti, the other thing I want to say is that they have Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps issue 50, which is his final run, and it's out as of Wednesday. So it's his swan song for the series. Please go and check that out, as well as Hawkman if you're a big DC fan like I am. Brad, what's new with your neck of the woods there?
You sent me an email, and I think it was for... Oh,
yeah, the X-Men one, right?
The X-Men one, yeah. And there was some review that you sent me that they gave us copies of a comic to read. Oh, yeah, all those comics. Yeah. Do you want to talk about them real quick? Maybe in a different episode. Okay. I would like to talk about them.
Okay.
But I did read them. I think, what is it? It's
Mad Cave.
Mad Cave Studios.
Yes, big shout out to Mad Cave. They, along with other people who have been emailing us, have been, asking us to take a look at their stuff and talk about it on the show. And Brad, I shared it with him immediately. I didn't even get a chance to read them yet, but Brad was like, "Oh, gimme." And sure enough, he really likes them. And Mad Cave, if you're out there, send us some more, and we'll be glad to talk about them on the show. That being the case, I think it's time to talk about one big thing, and that's our scoop for this week. It's actually a combination of 3 leaks that we've got from our inside source person. The first thing that I need to talk about is mine, which is the promise that I had made on last episode, which was to talk about the Snyder Cut and our conversation with Jay Oliva at San Diego Comic-Con. Now, again, this is all hearsay and speculation, all that stuff, but I will tell you that when I spoke with Jay Oliva, we had a discussion. Myself, my girlfriend was there, and 2 other girls who were like big Zack Snyder fans who had like the I Heart ZS shirts on. But he was saying to us that, don't count out this movement yet. Even if Zack Snyder doesn't show up, and even if you hear a lot of things going into Comic-Con that may turn out not to be true, they are working on something in the background, and you can hold me to that. So that is my little nugget of conversation with Jay Oliva. There was a couple little things that like me kind of fanboying out a little bit and like, oh, thank you for what you've done. But that's the gist of that. In terms of our actual inside scoop, our sources say that with the Birds of Prey movie, which we'll be talking about a great deal in our DC talk, We have the actual listing of who's going to be in this film, like the main players, as it were. First of which we have Harley Quinn. We have Barbara Gordon, Dinah Drake, Helena Bartonelli, Cassie Kane, and our big inside look is that Onyx Adams is actually going to be a part of it. Now, for starters, I want to say, unfortunately, after he shared this bit of information with us, he told us that Barbara Gordon has actually been cut from the film, kind of a last-second change that they've made as they've been pushing the script forward. I personally disagree with this. I think that if they're going to make Birds of Prey, they either have to have Barbara involved in some capacity, even if she's a side character and was sidelined and turned into Oracle or something like that, or she's got to have her own like solo movie. And we'll be talking about a lot of the DC stuff in our big talk for this week because there's been a lot of rumors, news, and things. So it's kind of like phase 2 of the DC universe. So we'll be talking about that in the big talk. But a lot of people would probably want to know, who is Onyx Adams? Now, to put Onyx Adams in kind of simple terms, it's kind of like having the Dora Milaje from Black Panther. She's a African-American woman, skilled martial artist, excellent fighter, but she will be a part of this film as of right now. And we also know that Renee Montoya will be a part of the film, but not as a main character. So take that for what it is. Some of this stuff could change at the drop of a hat, but as of right now, we have seen the physical proof that actually proves that this is the case. I still personally believe that Barbara Gordon will be in it, but, again, have to wait and see. Now, the other bit that actually goes along with this is the villain of the film. Now, before the news dropped just a couple days ago that it was, in fact, Black Mask, we found out that it was listed as Crime Lord in the physical information that we were presented with. Now, it has been shown that it's Black Mask, but what the other reporters and other trade magazines aren't telling you about right now is that there is a second villain, whether it's major or minor, we don't know at this time, but he's listed as Mr. Jones. Now, Mr. Jones, it's hard to say, but if I had to place my bet, it's one of two characters from the DC universe. It's either Simon, which is Simon Jones. Think of basically like Brainiac, but with like telepathic abilities, kind of like that. Or my personal pick, and the one I'm really going with here, which is Waylon Jones, aka Killer Croc, because I think what would Black Mask do better than hire a bunch of cronies to do his work for him? So if Black Mask calls up Waylon Jones, I mean, we already saw him in Suicide Squad. You could call up the exact same actor, get him to do the work, and you've already got some level of connectivity with the DC universe that we've seen already. So I think it's a good way to do it if they decide to have the second villain and if they decide to have the Birds of Prey the way that they're doing it. But again, I still think that if they're going to do this, they got to have Barbara Gordon. What's your take, Brad?
Even with like the characters that DC fans are going to know, you're going to have the same problem as Suicide Squad. You're going to have a bunch of characters that you're going to have to rush development, or at least character development in the movie. Yep. And you're going to come with a middled, somewhat all over the place movie.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Like the thing is, you're not going to please the DC fans because there's really not going to be enough depth, and the general crowd is really not going to be pleased because they're just unaware, or they don't have the amount of knowledge that the DC fans have. Yeah,
and see, this is where I come at this, and we'll be talking about this more with all of our DC talk at the big talk, but really my thought on this is I don't want to see them push for all of these weird, like the feeling now is that, you can't do the normal stuff, you've got to do something outside the box, give some people something different than what they'd seen before to make it fresh and interesting. But at the same time, you've got to start with a base before you can grow out and give that weird kind of thing. Now, granted, if you're a smart director, you can give different versions. Like when we get the Batman, it's going to be another Batman film. We've had plenty of Batman films before, but the idea that you don't show Batman's parents getting shot, that's a little different. If you put it maybe midway into his career, again, that's a different way of proposing this character that we've seen a million times now and making it still feel fresh, but it's still a base character. You can't have, Birds of Prey if you don't have a Batman film first. You can't set up who Batgirl is if you don't set up who Batman is. That's where I feel about all this stuff. Now, granted, DC is going to DC, Marvel's going to Marvel, and that's fine. They can do whatever they want, but I've seen what Marvel has done, and as a DC fan, I actually agree with setting that base. You get Captain America, you get Hulk. Even if Hulk didn't do well, you got it out of the way, you establish that base, and then you can have him go off and hang out with Thor on another planet and do all sorts of crazy adventures. But you establish the base first, you suck it up when it doesn't do super well, or maybe you just keep the budget low so that you return a little profit and you just move on from that, and then you make the big sequel. But you can't do these movies where it's like, oh, we're going to give a Joker movie that has no Batman, and we got to do Birds of Prey, and we got to do Kingdom Come, and we'll throw that one in the mix somehow, but it won't be connected. And like, slow your roll, That's where I'm at with all that. But, it is what it is. And yeah, I thought it was worth breaking the scoop. I'm sure a lot of people will be talking about this tomorrow. But yeah, that is where we're at. Birds of Prey, adding Onyx Adams and having a second villain, and a little bit of Snyder Cut news there too. So maybe some of it's coming, maybe all of it's coming, maybe none of it's coming, but now you know. So I think it's time to do what we always like to do, which is DC, Marvel, or miscellaneous. What do you think, Brad?
Ooh, I'm thinking we talk Marvel first.
Marvel it is. Okay, so at the number 3 talk, as personally chosen by Brad himself, we have a little bit of TV talk. And at TV talk, the first thing we have to bring up is something that I never thought was going to happen this year, and I'm very excited about, and that is that the 3rd season of Daredevil is coming by the end of this year. What do you make of this?
I'm excited. I haven't watched the recent season of Luke Cage. I haven't really had a lot of time.
Oh, it's good.
But Daredevil just felt like the more compelling character.
I just think
out of all the Netflix shows,
there's something more human about him, even though I know they're all powered individuals. But I guess Jessica is too, but she's not as well-rounded as an individual. She's, and I mean this in a respectful way, but she's kind of got, that bitchy attitude the entire time. And that's what kind of makes her a badass. And I get that, but like, there's a well of emotion that you go through when you deal with Daredevil and his interpretation. Like, he goes through pain and struggle. You see him in happy moments and all this stuff. Plus, I think his skill set leads to some interesting territory as well. So, that being said, I'm also very excited because, we have our inside people, and some of them are telling us they've got advanced copies of Iron Fist season 2 already, and they've seen it, and it's supposedly really good. It's one of the best seasons of Marvel TV that we're hearing about. So, very excited about that. And what I think is very interesting about all of this, aside from the fact that Iron Fist is actually good, is the fact that it looks like there might be a plan that Marvel's trying to put together with their Netflix series, where I think they're about 3 months out for each season. So if you look at where Luke Cage came out, where Iron Fist season 2 is coming, and then where Daredevil will likely end up, because the report is that it's coming by the end of the year, we're probably going to get Daredevil by December. So, I mean, if you keep this trend going, I mean, who's to say we can't get, another season of something, maybe Jessica Jones or whatever by March of next year or something. So I'm genuinely excited by this. I think having Daredevil come back is going to be great. But I don't know. Did you get to see the other big show that everyone's been talking about, which is Cloak and Dagger?
No. It's not a character combo I have a lot of interest in, so I've kind of let it go to the wayside.
Well, and see, that's the thing. We've talked about it, and we've kind of made fun about it, and I actually literally, just let it go. I was like, yeah, it's just, I'll watch one episode. If it doesn't hook me, I'll just, move on. And the funny thing is, I think it was maybe like a Marvel stream when they were having some of the actors and actresses on to talk about what the finale was like and this and that. And they've announced what the second season's going to be, which I'll be honest, kind of surprised me at first because I was like, really? They're giving it a second season? But I actually started watching it and it's really good. Not great. I mean, it's kind of like watching the production values from like Arrow season 1, but slightly cut under that. There's like a scene, I think I was telling you about this, where they're in a forest and then there's like this giant banquet table and there's like the cheesy white light that's because it's supposed to be a dream sequence, but I don't want to spoil the whole thing, but I'm just like, it just looked like they were running out of money. So like, we'll put it in a forest, we'll put a table there, we'll make it a dream sequence, and then we'll just make it last for like 15 to 20 minutes so we can eat up time and, you know, fill out the story a little bit. And it's just, I don't know, some weird things in the show. I'm not saying it's high quality television, but I was surprised. There were a lot of moments that had like real depth to them, and I actually kind of was into it. Okay. That being said, we are getting a season 2. So maybe I'll be super excited for it when I actually finish the season, but we know that the villain of season 2 is going to be Mayhem. Mayhem is a very interesting character and one that fits pretty well, I'd say, with both of those heroes. Do you think that, you know, you'd give a second season of Cloak and Dagger a try if you ever got through the first one?
I mean, I kind of feel like it's like the Flash TV show. Like, Flash doesn't really interest me all that much.
See, I've always found that very interesting because that's the one that, like, even when Flash had a bad season last season, I mean, or not as great as previous seasons, people were like, man, I still love Flash, though. I don't know about all the other ones, but I still like Flash. And then, and like here, you know, you and we're enjoying Arrow so much that, you know, we're not really thinking about the other ones as heavily. But I don't know. I guess it's to each their own, you know. That being said, we will get Cloak and Dagger in spring of next year, so look forward to that. That being said, one last bit of kind of TV talk. Or no, actually, no. You know what? Let's just move on to number 2. At number 2, we've got a whole bunch of Marvel Fox stuff. So first of which is that you remember that Deadpool animated series?
Barely.
Well, they did a little clip of it that people got to see after Donald Glover had put it together, and ultimately we found out that FX had scrapped it. Well, it wasn't FX who actually canned it. It turned out that Marvel did it, and I'm curious what you think about Marvel canning it. Do you think that it might have been due to, you know, its intensity, its graphic nature, or do you think that just Marvel thought that it wasn't the best fit?
It's possible that Marvel has some other cartoons planned, and if they're going to stick with a certain, I guess, format or style, Deadpool may not fit into there, because Deadpool is, you know, outlandish, brash, and, well, I mean, if there's any indication from the 2 Deadpool movies that we've seen, and judging by what Glover has kind of said how the TV show was going to go,
yeah,
I don't think it would have fit into, I guess, what a Marvel animated series would have been.
Well, see, that's the thing that's crazy to me about all this. First of all, this is why I highly encourage the diversification of all these Marvel heroes. Like, it's so weird the way that Disney wants to approach everything. They just want it to be bright, colorful, jokey, and I don't mean that as like a way to disrespect their approach, because I mean, it's working, period. But at the same time, it really lessens the capabilities that you have to explore the mindset of some of these characters and the struggles that they go through, and more the, you know, the interpersonal struggles that they deal with on a, you know, on a episodic basis. But it's very weird to me that Marvel just wants to the Disney Marvel side wants to shy away from all this stuff. Meanwhile, FX is like, no, go edgier, go harder. We encourage this. And Marvel just pulls away. And I don't really understand that. But, you know, I mean, I'm sure it's a budgetary reason. The funny thing is, if FX had just greenlit this and it became super popular, Marvel would just be like, "Oh, clearly we can see that this is a good thing. Let's just let the dice roll on this one." I can almost guarantee it, because that's what happened with Deadpool. Everyone was like, "Oh, Deadpool is not a good idea. It's this, it's that." And then Ryan Reynolds leaks it. Everyone flips out and goes, "Oh, we need this so badly." Then they greenlight it. It becomes a major hit. And then, you have Bob Iger over there at Disney talking, "Well, if it's profitable, I can't see a reason that we wouldn't take it on." And, that's really what it is. It comes down to dollars. And the reason that Disney does most of what they do with the Marvel properties, or at least lets Marvel do with those properties, is because they genuinely see the most amount of dollar signs from making it, kid friendly, as it were, making it for everybody in a sense. I don't know.
Well, I think it's possible that if they allowed the Deadpool movies to stay like they're rated R format, I'm wondering if they wanted the cartoon version to integrate with other heroes like Deadpool does in the comics and just make his language, I guess, a little toned down.
I mean, I could totally see them wanting to do that. I'm wondering if that makes enough sense, because I think what makes Deadpool shine so brightly right now is because he's like the antithesis of all of these other characters that exist in the sphere, at least the Marvel sphere. His angstiness and all that stuff kind of coincides with some of DC's stuff. He still has a way of being so sarcastically obscure with all of his references and all that stuff, even mocking DC. I don't know. I don't want to see it go down that path where Marvel just lightens him up so much that he just feels like the sarcastic guy that's mixed in with the X-Men, But we'll see. I mean, it could turn out that they make him his own, I don't want to say X Factor, but his own his own special thing on the side that people can enjoy, and maybe it'll be that, but we'll have to wait and see. Speaking of Deadpool, if you haven't, the Super Duper Cut is out now. If you like getting your movies digitally, if you want to get the physical copy on Blu-ray, which I've done already, I actually bought it at Comic-Con and got myself a Super Duper hat to go along with it. Thank you, Fox. It's this really cheesy hat, but you can get that on the 21st of this month. So keep an eye out for Deadpool Super Duper Cut. And the last bit to round out all of the Marvel news, at number 1, have you changed your thoughts on Venom at all since we last talked about him?
I mean, it looks all right. I'm just wondering how Eddie Brock is going to come out, and they need to get rid of the whole phasing or shifting between Brock and Venom look. It looks really stupid.
Well, see, I didn't say this on the Reacts, I don't think, but I think that's just simply a result of the MRI. The reason that I believe is happening is because, as you know, the vibrations and all that stuff tend to affect him. So we saw a trace of that in Spider-Man 3 when they're banging, what was it, like the metal poles together, and those vibrations
Yeah, but it doesn't look like really bad CGI in Spider-Man 3.
It's hard to say. And again, you've got post to convert all this stuff in, so it could actually look better when the movie comes out. I don't think it's going to be a case of Superman and Justice League. So I think it'll probably turn out to be all right. I mean, honestly, the images that we're seeing right now, like there was I think it was Entertainment Weekly posted an image just this week of him when they're in the convenience store and he's got the guy by the throat. And I was just like, man, that does not, I mean, I know it's CGI, obviously, but it's not so obvious that I can't, discern like, oh, well, yeah, you can see right here, it looks totally fake. I think it looks pretty legit. I mean, I can understand the complaints that some people have about not having the spider emblem on his chest, but there's a logical explanation as to why he doesn't. So I can live with that, but he looks like the skin or the symbiote itself looks like it's kind of oozing, and it looks pretty real. I'm sold on it so far. What happens when we actually get the movie might be a whole nother case. That being said, though, talking about everything that's going on with Spider-Verse over on the Sony side of things, remember how we talked about that Silver and Black movie for almost like a year now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not happening. Silver and Black.
That doesn't surprise me.
Right? So Gina Prince Blythewood, who was set to direct it, is not going to be directing it anymore because Sony has decided, and this might be the smartest thing I've heard since they announced Spider-Man is going to the MCU, which is they are going to split the two characters into separate movies and develop them independently. And I'm okay with that because, you know, at least I could see that those two heroes being represented in a positive way if you give them solo movies to do it. Because when they announced Silver and Black, they said, oh, it's going to be the two of them. It's going to be both their origin stories. It's going to have all these villains. It was almost sounded like when people were talking about the fact that they were going to rush for the Sinister Six right after Spider-Man 2. And I was just like, whoa, you got to pump the brakes. You got to get all of the Sinister Six actually fleshed out before you just throw them all up on screen. So I like the idea that they're giving them independent films. I can honestly say I don't like the fact that they're not interwoven with Spider-Man, but at the same time, Felicia Hardy doesn't necessarily need to be, you know, holding hands with Peter Parker for her to have her own movie. So I'm actually okay with that. If they develop them into a good movie, I'd be their first seat, you know, first ticket bought. But I knew that Silver and Black was just never going to take off, and I think we've been saying it for this last year. So any thoughts on Silver and Black splitting up or getting their own solo movies?
I hope they're not terrible.
Yeah, same here. And then here's the kicker that makes me go, oh, it's still Sony being Sony again. They have decided that they're also going to develop a Jackpot movie. And I bet you're wondering, who the hell is Jackpot, Ryan?
My God.
And at first, because I hadn't heard the name in so long, I was thinking like when Mary Jane would say, like, you just hit the jackpot, Tiger, or something like that. And I really had to go deep and think about it. And Jackpot actually is... Well, it's two characters. There's Sarah and then there's Alana. And then Alana was the one who basically took the mantle from Sarah. But basically it's a female that's a little athletic and super strong. And I think the Alana one, because she takes some pills or whatever, she becomes like indestructible or bullets bounce off her or something like that. Really... I mean, the suit looks pretty decent, but it's also kind of run-of-the-mill superhero. Like if you were just like, give me a superhero, you'd probably draw up something close to what these two look like in their suits.
Okay.
Yeah. Nothing special there. But I just want to paint this picture, and I hate to bash on Sony because I feel like it's such an easy thing to do. But at this point, we have a Silver Sable movie. We have a Black Cat movie. We have... Jackpot coming. We have a Morbius movie, a Craven movie in development, Silk, and Night Watch. Do you think that any of these movies are going to get made?
You know, at the rate that they're announcing them, and then, you know, Black and Silver getting the proverbial axe and getting split up, it doesn't surprise me at all. And I wouldn't be surprised.
So you think they're just all going to get the axe?
They might confirm Craven, then, you know, they might axe Morbius, maybe. Even though Morbius is a really cool character,
yeah,
they might axe him, to be perfectly honest.
So they confirmed today that Sony actually has the rights to 900 Marvel characters, and I was just sharing this with you before we got on air.
You know, I was thinking about that. How many of them are actually well-known?
See, now this is the thing. When we're talking about characters can mean villains. They can mean side characters, like, you know, the fact that they have the rights to J. Jonah Jameson, for example, like that's technically a character. So it sounds like a very high praise kind of number, like, oh, they've got 900, but like, are you really going to do, you know, that Aunt May spinoff film where she's like a secret agent, or are you really going to do that, you know, like a movie with Betty Brant or something like that? It just sounds silly. And
I think it's because I think they announced that they, you know, their own Sony universe of Marvel characters.
That's right. Yeah, I was telling you about this one. Yeah,
and I think they're just trying to kind of, I guess, make themselves look as an equal to Marvel, and I think it's just a stupid move. To be perfectly honest.
I will say this: that was just revealed. It's not. It's an official logo or moniker that they have for their branding of their universe, but it's not something that they're putting like their stamp of approval on so that everyone can share it. It was in some like boardroom meeting where they're like, it's the Sony universe of Marvel characters, so SUMC. It's not catchy at all. It sounds kind of stupid if I'm being totally honest. But at the same time, if it's an internal thing, if it's an internal thing and they're not like putting it on blast, like call us the SUMC or something like that, it's whatever, you know. I'm sure like the DCEU thing, I don't even know why that took off because I think it's a terrible moniker for DC. But everyone still keeps using it even after the fact that they confirmed, no, that was just some person who used that term and then it took off. It's DC Films, although recently I heard that it's World of DC, which I don't know if that's true.
I heard that too.
I think that one's bogus as well because no one's come out and actually confirmed that. It was like a Redditor or something talking, oh, it's World of DC now. But anyways, the whole point is that I think Sony needs to just slow their roll, focus on main characters. I do have some high hope in Morbius. I think that if they did a Black Cat movie, it could be great. Same thing with Silver Sable. But Morbius seems like the one that actually kind of makes sense right now. Given, you know, they're going with the darker thing. They've got Venom, and if Venom does well, then they're going to try for something next, whether it's a sequel for Venom or not. They're going to at least try and do something else in that universe. If it sucks, I have this personal bet that they're probably just going to stick with Into the Spider-Verse style films, or maybe even say, oh, well, you know, Miles Morales did such a great job. Let's make a Miles Morales live action movie, which again would not be a terrible idea, but you know, they've got to do things one step at a time.
They got to make up their minds on what, you know, the actual formula they want to go with.
Absolutely.
It's nice they have 900 characters, but, you know, there's...
you have to get one right first.
We've seen this before. You know, DC has a load of characters, and they've made, 1.5, 2 decent films in the last 6 years?
Agree to disagree, but that's fine. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, and they've got way more than 900 characters to go along with that, too. The idea is, again, simplify. The problem is that, and this is why I have an issue, and I don't want to get very long-winded with this, but like the idea that Marvel has their track record now. As long as they have that, they have a standard now that everyone seems to want to one up. And the problem is you don't do that by, you know, going full blast and going like, we've got our Avengers. We're going to make it in one movie or in 2 movies. Like, it comes from building that base, like I've said before. And once you do that and you take your time and make people go, oh, you know, it wasn't as big as Infinity War, but that movie was really good. Kind of like what Wonder Woman was. People just go, yeah, Wonder Woman was good. And then they keep repeating that. And you're like, oh, you've had 5 movies of people going, wow, that was good. It might not have been this big epic event, but that was a damn good movie. And all of a sudden, like, you've had 5 movies, 5 characters come together, and boom, you've got Justice League, you know? And then all of a sudden, like, you're in the same level of contention as Marvel is with all their stuff. So, you know, you just got to take your time. And I think these movie studios, they're going for the quick buck. And I'm sure Marvel would probably be doing the same thing if they were, you know, second in the race or however you want to look at it. But, you know, well, okay, fine. We can agree to disagree on that. But again, like the idea,
it could have happened, but you know,
exactly.
It's sort of circumstantial.
Exactly. It is what it is right now. So that being said, whether it's DC or Sony or whoever wants to get their hands on a superhero character, because I guess technically Universal still has the rights to like Namor, and some of Hulk.
Oh, yeah.
and all the Fox stuff too. Yeah. Just take it easy, simplify, you know? So, also with all of the Sony-ness and all that stuff, I wanted to tie that in with a little bit of Spider-Man news, some actual Spider-Man news, which is that Nick Fury and Maria Hill will be joining Spider-Man in his next outing, which is kind of a spoiler. for Infinity War. For those who thought that some characters may not be surviving.
Well, I say spoiler because I don't know. Are they going to survive somehow?
They have to. Yeah. You bring up a good point with that. What do you think? Do you think that they could be Skrulls or something like that?
I don't know what to make of it. It's tough. Either they live after Avengers 4, or they're Skrulls, or they're something else. Like, I don't know. Or some projection of,
Yeah, they're just Force ghosts.
Exactly. Not Force ghosts.
I know.
They're
just messing with you.
They're hallucinations from... I cannot.
No, I know. You're brain farting over there, and it's cool. No worries. But yeah, they're just like memories. Oh, the projections from Mysterio. I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
That being said, I think it actually is Nick Fury and Maria Hill, like for real. I think really what happens is that Tony bites the bullet at the end of Infinity War, whether we love to admit that or not. I think he goes finally away, as sad as that may be.
The hero's death.
Yeah, exactly. Like and again, this goes back into our Infinity War reacts, and you guys can go and listen to what we had to say there. I have my whole theory on what's going to happen going forward, but ultimately, though, I think Tony's going to get the bullet, and he's going to bite it hard, and I think Peter's probably going to go, I want to get basically the hell away from all this, and probably go maybe backpacking through Europe, for lack of a better term, or just do some sort of high school trip that takes them over to Europe or wherever they're going to set far from home. And I think because it's going to be an international incident, you're probably going to have some S.H.I.E.L.D. involvement there. And that's probably where the two of them are going to come in. So you get a little Nick Fury and a little Maria Hill, and they'll probably be there to be kind of like that rock for Peter when he's away from all the people that he knows. And I think that's probably the best assumption I can come up with for the whole movie. But do you think that they're going to be a little Mysterio projection?
I honestly don't know. I mean, it would suck if they just spoiled Avengers 4 just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, actually, the more you say that, the more it does make me think a little differently. Because again, like Marvel does such a good job of like keeping things close to the chest. Of like, I mean, on one hand, maybe it's them going, "Oh, that they're coming back." I mean, this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. But at the same time, maybe it's just them being a little sloppy and going, "Well, not everyone was going to die in Infinity War, so whatever."
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not like Hulk dying or one of the main Avengers. It's the people that are more or less supporting roles. So, we'll see. I mean, we've got like a whole nother year before we even see another Spider-Man movie, so we've got our time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And Avengers 4.
Exactly. So, that being said, I think we should move on to either DC or miscellaneous. What do you think, Brad?
I think DC.
All right, DC it is. So there's a whole lot of DC here, and I got to ramble through all of it, so just bear with me as I go through it. So first of which is we got Jovian Wade, who you would have seen recently in the first Purge. He is now going to be our new Cyborg. Now, you're probably thinking, what happened to Ray Fisher? And I'll tell you this much. We found out just today, actually, because Ray Fisher posted a response to it because people thought, everything involving Justice League is going under and they're trying to, scrap everyone who isn't Wonder Woman. That is not the case. Henry Cavill is not out of his contract. There's none of that going on. This is just a casting for the TV series. It does not affect the films, just like we have two Flashes. We have one on TV and we have one on the movies. So this new Flash, this new Cyborg is going to be a smaller scale one. But interestingly enough, he's not going to be on the Titans. He's going to be on Doom Patrol. Do you like that, or do you think that he should be on Titans right away?
I guess I should ask you this question. Does Cyborg fit the mold of what the Doom Patrol is? And from what I can remember is that it's a pretty wonky team from DC.
Yeah, it's like a stranger version of the X-Men, to put it simply.
Like from your perspective, is that something that might work, or is that something that's like a bit of a stretch?
So actually, this is a very good question, because this is how I kind of wanted to answer this anyways. So a lot of people brought this to my attention. Oh, we don't like this. Cyborg needs to be with the Teen Titans. And yes, I agree with that. He can be with the Titans. He can be with Justice League, and I'd be fine with either of those. Him being with Doom Patrol, as far as I know from the comics, was not a very common thing. But knowing what I know with what's coming with Justice League, some of which I can say, or I'm sorry, with Teen Titans, the new Titans series, that I can say and then I can't say. What I can say is this. I know that some things are done on the TV side that's for impact rather than for comic book accuracy. Now, does that mean that DC is intentionally giving you the middle finger and saying, no, he's never going to be with the Titans. You're going to have to suck it up and watch him on Doom Patrol? No. But I believe it to be is that they're using a character that people know from the movies, Cyborg, who is a very popular character, even if he wasn't as big a deal as people wanted him to be out of Justice League. They can take a character like Cyborg and go, oh, maybe you don't know the Doom Patrol very well, but you know that Cyborg is going to be on it now. And all of a sudden now you're going, well, I at least want to see the Cyborg episode and see what that's all about. And the example I brought to other people who've asked me about this of like why I think this could actually work is thinking about when Arrow was struggling for a little bit there. And then who did they bring in? They brought in the Atom. And the Atom's here. And then people at first were like, well, yeah, but it's the Atom. And then they showed the suit and they're like, oh, he looks awesome. And then there was a whole bunch of controversy because they did it, but everyone was like, oh, they're just trying to make an Iron Man and that's not the Atom. And all true and fair points. But did everyone start talking about him? And by the time that season was over, was he not the favorite character that everyone was talking about? He was. And sure enough, they liked him so much that they spun him off into Legends of Tomorrow because everyone loves Ray Palmer now. It's taken on a life of its own that he's actually like his own version of that character that people love and appreciate. And like they've written him into comics that way now. So that being the case, I think this is another good thing for Cyborg where they can go, okay, it's not the one from Justice League. And yeah, you probably want to see him in Teen Titans, but he's going to have like this kind of like walk-on cameo where he's going to be involved with something in the Doom Patrol's experience. And then just like Beast Boy eventually went from Doom Patrol over to the Titans in the comics, Cyborg is going to do the same thing. They're probably going to have some interaction and like, I don't even know how it would go, but they'll probably brush into each other like, oh yeah, you know, you seem like you'd be a better fit for someone like these Titans that we know that we met, you know, for whatever. And then all of a sudden, you know, you'll see him like walk away and then next season on Titans, boom, there's Cyborg and then he's a part of the group. So anything's possible. Maybe they don't do it, but I'm willing to bet they're saving him for season 2. They'll bring him over after he's been introed because we've talked about this before with Titans. They've actually made like every single episode an introduction and an origin for one of the characters. Like one episode is all about Tim Drake and another one is, or I'm sorry, maybe Jason Todd. It doesn't matter. So like there's ones for the Robins, there's ones for Raven, there's ones for Beast Boy and for Starfire and all the other characters, including Hawk and Dove. Everyone's getting an origin in the season. At some point you have to go, okay, we're running out of episodes to give origins to. And then you just, you know, backdoor intro Cyborg through another series. And that to me is fine because you can only do so much with, I think they're doing like 8 to 12 episodes. So, you know, with that limited amount, you can only do so much. So I like what they're doing. All right, moving on from there to a little bit more with Doom Patrol. We actually have a casting of someone who's officially a part of the Doom Patrol, and that is Diane Guerrero, and she'll be playing Crazy Jane. Now, I thought this character might stand out for you because basically she's like a female version of Legion over on FX.
Okay.
You like your characters a little crazy?
Well, Legion's a special case, but I guess, you know, a character that has multiple personalities with multiple powers, and if that's something that Crazy Jane is sort of similar to, I guess.
Yeah.
That could be something cool.
Yeah, I think you're going to get a kick out of her. Did you get any subscription for DC Universe yet, or no?
Oh, no.
Oh,
no,
you should.
Titans the trailer just looks bad.
See, okay, and I want to bring this point up real quick, too, on this. I think, and I was having this conversation with a bunch of people from our big podcast chat group and all that. We were all discussing like the value of the DC Universe. And I think pretty much all, except for a couple people, agreed that even if you hate the TV shows, let's just say like Titans is bad, Doom Patrol is bad, and Swamp Thing, the next one, is bad. You still have their entire library or near to their entire library of comics. You have all the old TV shows that people already have previously enjoyed no matter what. I mean, there's very few people you'll find that didn't like Batman the Animated Series from the 90s, for example.
True.
And just so much other stuff that can go along with it that I think justifies that small single-digit number a month that they were already offering it at. So, I mean, the fact that I was able to get 15 months as opposed to 12 months, because they give you 3 months free if you get the whole year. I mean, that was more than enough of a selling point. And, you know, if all the original series that they're starting to develop and, you know, create are good, I mean, then I feel like it's a win-win no matter what. So I'm saying it from the DC fanboy perspective. If that's not enough of a selling point to you, I totally get it. But yeah, I think that it's got my money for pretty obvious reasons there. That being said, though, talking about all of the DC universe there, because we're still doing all this TV talk here. What's interesting is we've, I believe, announced an episode or two ago that they are doing the Stargirl series. Now, it looks like they might be starting to cast for the next hero that's going to be inside of that series, and it's going to be the second iteration of Wildcat, which is Yolanda Montez. And I personally like the, Ted, the original, but do you think it's cool that they finally go and give the female version of Wildcat for this new series?
Oh, I barely know who Wildcat is.
Actually, you saw Wildcat in Arrow. Remember when they were doing the boxing thing where Laurel is training and then she...
Oh, yeah, okay.
So that's Wildcat.
That was such a brief
I know, it really
cameo.
is. I really wish that Ted would have got way more play, but he's also a little bit older in the comics. They made him younger for the series too, but yeah, he's like that expert boxer and combatant type. And I mean, Yolanda's cool too, but I really wish that they'd given more of the JSA characters some play. The thing that I think is most interesting about this is the fact that it seems like this is almost the next generation of the JSA. So you might see characters like, I don't know, maybe Obsidian, for example, or, well, obviously Stargirl as opposed to Starman, or maybe a second iteration of Sandman. So, we'll see as Stargirl comes along, but this is the first announcement other than the show actually existing that has me kind of interested. So I'm curious to see where they go from there. Moving on from there, we did kind of mention it just a half second ago. Swamp Thing is moving forward. James Wan is overseeing the whole production of the thing. It will be shooting as early as September 10th. So basically a month from today, down in North Carolina, they're going to start this whole thing in motion here. Do you want to see the Swamp Thing series? And if so, what do you want to see most from it?
I'm a little curious about Swamp Thing because other than, some really bad 70s or 80s interpretations.
Yeah.
I don't know. Swamp Thing has always been a monster kind of character, and to see him get a TV show that doesn't portray him as maybe a monster, maybe half hero, half anti-hero, possibly.
Yeah.
That sounds cool.
So let me ask you this. How do you feel about Constantine?
Constantine's a cool character.
If you like Constantine, you'll like the way that they team up with each other, because really what Swamp Thing, especially over the years, has done is it's evolved as a character. He's more of a creature that protects life and he's a protector of the green, which is essentially the essence of life. So there's a lot of like dark and supernatural tales with him and with Constantine and Zatanna, which is really kind of the essence of what Justice League Dark is. So it's Justice League doing the supernatural kind of adventures. It's really good. Even if you just read some of like, the more recent iterations, I think you might get sucked into who Swamp Thing is. And it's more than just, with all due respect, Man-Thing. Because I think Man-Thing is more Marvel trying to do, we've got another creature, but he's like Swamp Thing, but he's just kind of creepy. There's so much more to Swamp Thing, and that's why I'm really excited to see what James Wan does with it, because I know he touches on the horror, the supernatural, but at the same time, I think he knows how to get to like the heart and the emotion of characters, which is what I'm excited for most with Aquaman when it comes out, is that like there is a lot of darker moments in it, but at the same time, you can still see a lot of love and empathy and emotion from the characters. So we'll see what Swamp Thing turns out to be, but it's coming September 10th, so hopefully we get a Swamp Thing cast soon. Moving off of the DC universe and all that stuff there, we do have the animated Superman movie, The Death of Superman, which just dropped. We found out that Reign of Superman is actually going to be the follow-up to that, because it is the two-parter, and we just found out that Cameron Monaghan is going to be playing Superboy. Cameron Monaghan, obviously most notably known for being Jerome/Jeremiah, aka Joker on Gotham. Do you think that he's a good casting for Superboy?
I did not see him as a Superboy.
I know, it doesn't sound right, does it? If you get a chance,
he seems really crazy.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I don't know.
He seems very unhinged, but like they show an audio clip of him. There's a video that previews the whole thing. Like Jerry O'Connell is going to end up playing Superman again, but he'll be the cyborg Superman version, so he'll sound like him. And I don't want to get long-winded with that, but yeah, like they've got all these different interpretations. And the best thing about the Reign of the Supermen is the fact that it's kind of 4 individualistic characteristics of what make up Superman, and the 4 of them separate don't make for a great hero, but when you bring it all together, actual Superman, that's when you get the real hero. But it's very interesting because it's almost like a breakdown of what makes Superman who he is, and these 4 individual elements, these different Supermen, make it a very interesting story of what happens when you kind of deviate from what makes that character great and show individual aspects of it. So like Superboy is very much kind of like the ego, the showboat, the one who's out in public shaking hands and kissing babies and all that stuff. And Cameron Monaghan, I think when you see him, he gets very animated with the role, and he does sound like a young kid who's just out there to please his fans. And I think it's really cool. And I'm genuinely more excited for that than I am for seeing, Death of Superman, which I saw it. It's good. But Sam Liu, who we'll be talking about in a little bit, he directed both of these, and he does such a fantastic job that I want to see him deviate from Superman dying, because we've now seen it 3 times. We've seen it in Batman v Superman, we've seen it here, and then we saw it in Superman Doomsday, and this is like the next evolution beyond that the comics talked about. And I think ultimately at the end of this we'll see Superman return, but I really like to see the continuation of, like, now that he's gone, how does the world respond to that? So that being said, we have one more bit of TV talk that I really wanted to bring up here, and that is the casting over on DC TV side, over with CW there, of Batwoman. We have Ruby Rose officially announced as Batwoman. She'll be seen in this year's crossover episode, and then they're working on getting her own series on the CW. What do you make of Ruby Rose as Batwoman?
Well, I did like her role in John Wick 2.
I figured you'd like that, yeah. Okay.
She didn't really have a lot of speaking lines in that movie. I think she played a deaf character.
I think she did, yeah.
I think it was like the 2nd season of Orange is the New Black she was in as well.
Right.
But I never really watched the show.
True.
Like, I watched a few episodes of it, and it was just kind of, maybe it's just not me. But as far as Abby Rose goes,
did you say Abby Rose?
What's that?
Did you just say Abby Rose?
Did I say Abby Rose?
Yeah, I think you did. Ruby Rose. Yeah.
Ruby Rose. Well,
I think you got the Beatles on the brain.
Same. Yeah, that's true. As far as I can tell, Batwoman is, I think she's a queer character in the comics.
Yeah, she is LGBT. Yeah.
Gotcha. So I guess in this instance, like, it's a perfect casting, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I think she is, and she's a very staunch representative, and she's very outspoken about her identity as a lesbian, and I'm proud for her. Like, she was on, I think it was Jimmy Fallon earlier this week, and was saying that, you know, she was the kind of person who grew up looking for representatives in the superhero realm that were not only female, but that were, you know, lesbian like herself, and there wasn't that. And now the fact that she not only gets to be that for other people, but it's literally her that gets to be that role is something that she feels genuinely rewarded by, and she really wants to do a good job with the role. So I commend her. I've never really thought like, wow, she just like killed it in terms of acting. And I will go with the people, and I understand that feel like, oh, they could have picked someone who's better. But I think that she looks the part. You know, anyone can get red hair. That's not a big deal to me. But I think she physically looks the part. I think she's a competent actress. You know, I mean, she's going from a film career down to the TV level. So, I mean, some people would look at it as a step down, but TV these days is a step up for a lot of people's career. I mean, look at what it's done for Grant Gustin and for Melissa Benoist, trying to do these characters on the small screen. They're as iconic as anything else these days. So, I mean, this is a huge win for her. I think it's a win for a lot of people who want to see this character. I am still concerned on the acting level of it because, you know, I had seen her in Triple X 3. I had seen her in John Wick 2. Most recently, she was in The Meg, which is ironic because she got the call for this part an hour before she attended the premiere for The Meg. So she had to like keep it under wraps and not tell anyone until after the premiere was over. But I just thought that was kind of interesting little tidbit that she shared. But yeah, kudos to Ruby Rose. Like, I really want to see what she does with it, because in my mind, as weird as it sounds, I was actually picking Gina Carano for the role, and Gina Carano and her look almost exactly the same, but I think there's just a little bit more mass and muscle on Gina. So, I mean, this is kind of a perfect fit in my opinion. It was someone I wasn't expecting, but I really like it. So that's really that over on the CW side. The only thing I want to quick bring up before I wrap up all the DC TV stuff, there was a false report that was thrown out there about Grant Gustin. Oh, he's getting a new suit, and it's this and it's that for season 5. And apparently it is true. He is going to get a new suit, but someone showed this really awkwardly taken shot of him, and they made it out to be like, this is the new suit. Look at how trash it looks. And they just tried to bury him online so that everyone could be like, oh man, Flash is going downhill. And then he came right out immediately and dug into this person and said, like, you know, I don't really appreciate you body shaming me in this whole thing. Like, he's a naturally skinny guy, so he actually has to pack on mass year after year just to get into the role and look the part. But that wasn't even a fully finished suit. But apparently, as of the time of this, they have actually dropped the suit, what the image is going to look like. So we'll probably post that on our Twitter, what that is. But I just want to say, like, I think as a whole, we jump to react to things way too much. And it's nothing wrong with that. I mean, hell, that's the reason that we have our Reacts episodes, so that we can talk about them. But I think at the same time, we also need to, like, calm ourselves down and not just go, like, holy shit, that's terrible, and just go, okay, well, maybe there's a reason this looks significantly different from what we've seen for the past 4 seasons, and, you know, come at it with a little bit more of a level head. Do you have any take on the Flash suit, all that nonsense?
I don't understand the reason for calling Gustin too skinny, I guess.
Well, yeah, and then I think some people said ugly and, yeah, all this other stuff, too.
Yeah, just a bunch of salty people on Twitter, which is really? Why I don't use Twitter.
Yep. It's a very reactionary place, I'll tell you that much. Anyways, let's move on to our top 3, as we like to do here. So at number 3, not a whole lot with the DC stuff, because we're saving most of it for the end of the show, as we talk about the movies and the future of DC going forward in Phase 2. But at number 3, a little bit of Zack Snyder-y talk here, because, you know, he's always in the news. Zack apparently came out and confirmed that in his interpretation of what Batman v Superman was setting up for, Dick Grayson was the one who was the dead Robin in Batman's cave. So what do you make of that, and where do you think it would have gone?
Oh, so Dick Grayson, the original Robin, is dead.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, that's really interesting that the original Robin's dead. And I think the original Robin is... Does Dick Grayson become anyone else?
Oh, yeah, he's Nightwing.
Does he become Nightwing?
Yeah.
Okay. So if there's no Nightwing, what kind of implication is that kind of...
I mean, it doesn't necessarily ruin the universe, but I think... You know, and this is before people, because I know a lot of people will be like, oh, well, actually, he's a Snyder fanboy. He always talks about him. He must love the guy. But I really respect Zack Snyder as an artist. Actually, as a side note, I just saw that Amazon Prime added all 3 different cuts of Watchmen, including like that ultimate cut. And I started watching it last night, and I was amazed at how well that holds up. It's really good. And I'm not talking in terms of dialogue and all that stuff. I just mean the fact that, like, CGIs, the visuals, the way that Zack paints a picture looks as good as more than most movies, I'd say, that are out today. Even like, I was looking at it because it was 2009 that came out. That was the same year that X-Men Origins Wolverine came out. And by comparison, Wolverine is just such a shit show by comparison. Like, the CGI is awful. None of it holds up. Like, even though I can find tiny little parts to defend about that movie, it pales in comparison to what Watchmen did. And I realize as I'm saying this, it doesn't sound like, oh, this is the guy who feels, differently about Zack Snyder, but I do respect his artistry, and I respect what he's done as a director, even if it hasn't always gone through. I mean, no matter what he does, the Owls of Ga'Hoole will always be there. You know what I mean? So at the same time, I don't think that Zack, despite his efforts to be the center of the DC universe when they gave him the power to be that, was the DC fanboy that I think a lot of people make him out to be, because I think he had a lot of resources to borrow from and a previous love for Batman that he was playing off of. But the idea, at least for me on a personal level, to look at him killing off Dick Grayson, not that you can't do, because Dick has died in the comics, but in terms of his usage in the greater universe, Dick is not the one you kill off. You kill off Jason Todd. You kill off Tim Drake. Those are ones that can die, and usually Dick is the one who carries on Batman's mantle, if nothing else, unless you count like Batman Beyond. But I don't want to get too long-winded with that. The whole thing, though, is like killing Dick Grayson off really kind of stops the show. Like, same thing with The Dark Knight Rises or whatever. Like, if you had just killed Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, even though I know that's not really Robin and all that stuff, if you just killed him off there would have been no hope for someone to take on the mantle after him. So it's kind of like that sort of mindset with me when I see this. So I don't think Zack has a complete grasp of everything that makes DC great, but at the same time, he did make a bunch of movies that I enjoyed. So, take that for what it's worth. Interesting footnote that also goes along with all the Justice League, Zack Snyder-ish stuff of it all is, as a result of Zack being booted from Justice League and what he had wanted, so much had been cut, and we know this. I mean, there's like a fraction of it that's actually even Zack's still in there. But the one that was hurt the most as a result of this movie being shifted around the way that it did wasn't actually Superman, although I could argue that it really was Superman. Reportedly, it was Cyborg. So much so that, I mean, we know that the football game where he gets his injuries and his origin and all that stuff got completely cut. They cut his mom out of the film completely. Apparently there was this whole emotional arc that he was supposed to go through throughout the course of the film, including the fact that at the end, Silas Stone, his father, who we see prominently featured in the film, actually dies, and they gave his lines to Lois Lane. So when she says that part at the very end of the movie where it's like, oh, people are good and, you know, heroes can come out of nowhere or whatever, and all you have to do is look up into the skies, or all that stuff, that was actually written for Silas Stone to have recorded for Victor at some point in the movie. So they gave it to Lois. Yeah. So little tidbits about that. And another reason why, even though I'm not like, you know, pounding on Warner Brothers' door, like, give us that cut, I really want to see what the Snyder cut would have been like, just because there's so much difference from one film to another with everything we know. So that being said, I think we should move on to number 2. This one I wanted to personally bring up because we were talking about Sam Liu, who directs the DC animated films. Actually, Jay Oliva did a lot of them as well. But it was back in March. And I don't know if I talked about this on whatever episode it was, but middle of March, I had brought up that we posted, you know, hashtag save or renew Green Lantern the Animated Series, so GT or GLTAS. And it took off, and it got up to like 300 likes or whatever it was. And the actors, the producers, the directors, all that stuff all started giving likes. And I'd kind of forgotten about it until just this week when Sam Liu, who directed some of those episodes as well, all of a sudden came out of nowhere and liked that post. And I went, oh, that's pretty much everyone who's done this series. And I thought to myself, okay, well, this is very interesting that, you know, that was almost 6 months ago now, and he's liking it. And this is right around the time that the DC universe is trying to grow and expand their properties. This is more of a theory of mine, but hear me out. I believe that they are going to try and resurrect Green Lantern, the animated series. And I said this same kind of thing back when I had met with the Greg Weisman, who did Young Justice. And, you know, I talked with him just very briefly. And he was like, you know, don't count it out completely, you know? So that's kind of what I kept hearing with Green Lantern, was like, if you keep pushing for it, it could happen. Now, is it possible that it doesn't happen at all? Sure. But what was interesting was one of our fans and friends of the show, Mikey, who does a bunch of music stuff and wants to actually make some music for our show, pointed out that if you watch, I think it's the last episode of it's Justice League Action, the animated series that came out last year. There is an episode with Green Lantern, and at the very end, without spoiling the whole thing, it actually connects to Green Lantern, the animated series, in a very specific way that, unless they were trying to do something with it on purpose, that scene would mean absolutely nothing out of context. So I think the way that they did that, because they brought back the guy, Josh Keaton, to play Green Lantern for that specific episode, and then the character that comes back, I'm not going to say who, at the very end of the episode, is very much a teaser that there's more going on in that Green Lantern universe than they left it as. So take that for what you will. The fact that he not only liked our post after all these months, and then I gave him a thank you, and then he liked that as well. I'm just going to say, I think it's very possible, and you guys can kind of like bookmark this right now and say like, oh yeah, they called it. But I really genuinely believe that as DC Universe develops, if even one of their animated shows starts to take off, they're going to greenlight some more stuff like Green Lantern. So, yeah, that's just my little number 2. This is the personal one that I wanted to throw in there. Let's talk about Joker, everyone's favorite movie, at number 1.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. They can't see me winking, but yeah, Joker is everyone's favorite. So that being said, I mentioned it at the top of the show. Thank you to everyone for, kind of spreading that Joker news. For those of you who didn't catch it on the last episode, we revealed the scoop that through our inside sources that Joker is actually going to get his manic side more or less from cocaine that he is going to apply to his face. And it's going to basically, again, this is supposed to be more of a quote unquote realistic take on him. It's going to be non-canonical with the rest of the movies. So I can believe it to a point, but I'll call a spade a spade. I think it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but when you have physical proof that someone's presenting to you as an inside source who has a very reputable following, I can't say much more than that about the person, but our inside source tells us that, so, take it with a grain of salt. And they ran with it. It became a thing, and then some sites literally shot it down because they're like, no, we can't verify this, we can't da-da-da. But, it caught fire there for quite a while. That being said, I wanted to ask you, Brad, first of all, before I get to some of the announcements, what do you make of the Joker thing? I mean, are you of the mindset that this could actually turn out to be good? Do you even think the cocaine thing is real? Where are you with Joker?
I think, what did you say? A realistic approach to the Joker?
At this point, I'm thinking a combination of Killing Joke meets Scarface.
So basically, Heath Ledger wasn't a realistic approach to the Joker?
I don't want to piss off a lot of people, but Heath Ledger is not my Joker, so I'm not even...
yeah. All of this, he's not my Joker.
I'm not saying... He brought a great performance, but that to me is not the Joker. I thought that was a really unstable henchman who had a lot of great moments and delivered a fantastic performance. But when I think of the Clown Prince of Crime, I do not think of Heath Ledger's Joker. That's all I'm saying.
This movie's just going to piss everybody off.
Oh yeah, no.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
This is going to piss everybody off.
Of that, I have no doubt. Yeah, I'm not. I don't know who this is for, if I'm being totally honest. And if I was talking, well, actually, I even said it when I had my interview with Warner Brothers. I said, I honestly don't know what the plan is, but I trust you guys. But I'm just telling you, I don't think people are going to be sold on this movie. And that was just me and my heart to heart with that interview I had with the executive from Warner Brothers. That being said, if they're going to make it, they're going to make it. That being on top of that, it sounds like we've got some casting. So Brian Callen, who you either know from The Goldbergs, Mad TV, he's done a bunch of other movies. Actually, he was in a bunch of the Hangover movies. He confirmed on a podcast, I think one that he does actually, that he's been cast in the Joker movie. The reason probably being because he has such a good relationship with the director, which, I mean, he's been in most of the movies that the guy's directed. We have Mark Maron coming on as reportedly some sort of television talk show host type. And then we also have Robert De Niro, who's also going to be another TV personality type. So what do you make of this? Do you think that those are things that give you confidence in this movie? I mean, we also have Zazie Beetz coming over from Deadpool to be this single mother that's going to be in the film. But do you think that this is something that will be strong based on its casting, or it'll just be what it's going to be?
Casting alone isn't going to make this movie incredible.
No, I'm not even saying incredible at this point, but I guess to put it simply, do you think that it will at least be enjoyable to watch a movie with some, high level talent rounding out the film?
It'll be fun that's the thing. It's about seeing actors that you like, or that actors that are good. It's not about the actual movie and the content that it has. Yeah.
And I mean, that's really what concerns me about it. Cause I know, especially after talking with Warner Brothers, that they reassured me that the reason that they do the things that they do, at least on the television side, is because they have such a library to work with and they know it so well. I honestly feel like this Joker separate movie is some sort of corporate decision that has nothing to do with DC. They were just like, we need to get out a movie right now, but we also want something dark and emotional and something that could win us an Oscar again so that we can keep saying that we get Oscars. And we'll be talking about that actually when we get over into miscellaneous. But that being said, I don't see the need for this. I don't see why anyone would want this. I don't think it makes the Joker any better of a character. I mean, the only thing it can possibly do that might be a saving grace is make people go, oh, yeah, I guess we don't really need to worry about the Jared Leto Joker. But the problem with that is it's not going to eliminate the Jared Leto Joker because that Joker still exists. Because this Joker is outside of the canon. He's an Elseworlds Joker, if you will. Mm-hmm. So I don't know why they're doing this movie. It's like when we talk about Sony, you're like, why are they trying to make a Kraven the Hunter film? Why, So
yeah, exactly.
So yes, I don't always love everything DC does. I'll just put that out there. But that being said, maybe it'll turn out to surprise us. Maybe they'll change enough things, because one of the reports that we got is confirmation from another site who was saying like, yep, the cocaine thing was true, but they changed it after the first draft, because apparently our cocaine thing was what was going to happen with Joker in the first draft. And now that there's another draft that's out there of the script, they changed what they were going to do. So maybe it turns out to be good, but if they're doing this whole kind of really, realistic, gritty Scarface thing, I'm not sold. But again, healthy criticism of a film can also produce some great results. So hopefully maybe they listen to, well, whether us or not, they listen to somebody and they go, oh, well, maybe this is a bad idea, and they change it for the better.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. And then we'll talk about the rest of the DC stuff in the big talk, but I think it's time for a little miscellaneous. What do you think, Brad?
I agree.
All right. So miscellaneous it is. At our number 3 talk here, we have Terminator. Have you seen the new image?
I have.
What do you think of the new Terminator image?
I honestly, I like that Lisa Hamilton is back, to be perfectly honest.
Linda Hamilton?
Yes, sorry, Linda
you
Hamilton.
You are brain farting on names tonight, man.
Late, man.
I know. I just like busting your chops.
It's so late.
I know you know. But actually what's most interesting to me about this image is Mackenzie Davis.
Yeah.
So I have a working theory on this one as well. And, none of this is confirmed, all that, blah, blah, blah. I really genuinely believe she is going to be a human-created Terminator that is going to help. I don't know if you call it the Resistance.
John Connor?
Yeah, no, I was actually going to say Linda Hamilton. I don't know who her female compatriot is in that image, but they're going to take down Gabriel Luna's Terminator in this film. I think that the humans are finally wising up, because they've had to deal with how many Terminators at this point, and as a way to respond to any Terminator-related threat, they create a good one that can actually oppose them, and that's where they create Mackenzie Davis's character. The reason I say that is because if you look in the image, you can see there's like white outlines throughout her body, implying that there's some sort of mechanized components to her body, unless she's really into like solid white tattoos. But I really genuinely believe that it's kind of an indicator that, white light, being good, that she'll probably be on, the side of good in this movie. So it'll be kind of interesting to see good Terminator fight bad Terminator. And again, because this is James Cameron, I'm like 90% sure this is the MO that he has, which is to have a Terminator fight another Terminator, like he did in T2. The interesting thing, though, on top of all this, they're saying that Arnold Schwarzenegger is coming back, and in typical James Cameron fashion, they're going to do it in 3D. So what do you make of all this news?
I think the 3D is unnecessary.
Okay.
But beyond that, I do like the theory that Mackenzie Davis's character is a human-created Terminator. Which also, if you say, if that is true, it ties it in with Terminator Salvation.
Don't get my hopes up, man. You're just
okay.
I love that movie so much.
Maybe it's a different. Maybe
I know.
it's a different continuity. Or they passed information somehow from that movie. But anyway.
Even if they soft kind of almost retcon that, like where they're like, yeah, that happened, but we just don't talk about the events of that film. I'm like, okay, I can at least subscribe to that. Actually, you know what? As soon as we're done recording, I'm going to watch Terminator Salvation tonight because I need to watch it. But that being said, though,
like it. It's a good one.
I really enjoy it. I wish Warner Brothers had control of the franchise and not James Cameron, because I loved what they did with that movie. Despite the backstage antics of one former Batman who didn't want to play ball. Yeah. I still thought that what they did with that movie was good, though.
I think also as long as they can like help us forget Genesis ever happened, that'd be awesome.
I agree with that.
Although, like, I'm still trying to figure out, like, so there's no image of John Connor,
right?
Which means there's a shift of importance to a different character, which makes me think that there maybe something happened in, the whole time traveling bit.
Yeah.
And instead of John Connor, maybe it's someone else that is the real quote unquote savior of humankind, and all of the typical James Cameron time travel loopiness that'll happen. Okay,
so here's what I've heard so far, and I can't confirm all of this, but just take it with a grain of salt. So,
okay.
What I've heard is that Gabriel Luna is obviously the bad Terminator who's trying to kill Sarah Connor, as they always do, which I get that part. At the same time, I like the idea that Mackenzie Davis is kind of the resistance built up to fight alongside Sarah Connor to take down this threat. But apparently John Connor might not be in this film. And if he is, he's supposed to be...
Interesting.
I've heard that he's actually, quote-unquote, in hiding throughout the entire film so that the Terminator can't get to John. I don't know if that's true or not. I cannot confirm that, but it's our inside people from other shows and things like that have said that they know the inside scoop because they've talked to, like, the Terminator fans, the site, and that's, I guess, what's going to happen, is that John isn't even going to be a part of it. And it's what I said before, too, that to hearken on this particular image, I don't hate that we're seeing a whole bunch of women in there, because obviously, because there's a bunch of people who are like, oh, where's John Connor? We need to have some men in this film. Where's Arnold Schwarzenegger? Why are they showing all women? First of all, the reason they put this image out is because they know that it's very popular right now to put women out in front. And rightly so. They totally deserve it. For years of men having, like, the out in front role, it's nice to have women stand out. But the problem is I see it as two things. One, I see it as a money-making grab, which isn't right for the film. So I don't like it in that regard. But there is men in this film, so the people who are all mad about it, it's pretty ridiculous. That being said, the other thing that I have a problem with it is I honestly think that this is James Cameron reacting again. Because remember what we totally called him out for with Wonder Woman and his negative comments about females in Hollywood?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we did a whole big talk conversation about him. You guys can go and listen to that. So long story short, he basically goes off on Wonder Woman like, oh, she made all this money, but she's really just a sexist character. That's the only reason that people went and saw her. And like, no, she's a fully developed, fully well-rounded character that embodies, the female spirit and the female attitude, and is a positive portrayal of a character that isn't some gun-toting, I got a cigarette in my mouth, I'm going to flick it like I'm some macho badass male, but I'm a female too. Like, there's a difference between his characterization of what makes a strong female and what actually makes a strong, like, feminist-driven female, like someone who's strong but strong-willed, rather than just like, oh, because I got a cigarette and a gun, that somehow makes me cooler than everyone else in the room. And that's not a positive role model for little girls either. Like, I love the fact that Wonder Woman was that for so many little girls out there, or even for adult females too. Like, she was just a great overall character rather than, catering to some specific demographic. Like when you see James Cameron's females, they're always like, I think of Aliens, that they got that one girl, I think her name is like Rico or whatever, and she's got the huge chain gun that she's rocking, and like, oh yeah, she was such a badass, what a great character she was. But like, she had nothing really to say. She just walked in there, was like, I'm just gonna kick ass, and like, that's it. Like, Wonder Woman had so much more depth, emotion, and character development than these singularly driven women that are in James Cameron's films, that I actually don't like that they're trying to do this again. And it feels like that's the driving force behind this image that worries me a little bit, is the fact that they want to do this. Oh, we're just going to have 3 women out in front now, and that's somehow going to make it better. And they all look like they're all coming in to kick ass. And I mean, I don't know about the character on the left because we haven't got enough information on her. But if it's just like, give Sarah Connor a gun again and have her, fight off another Terminator, like, I hope that there's something more to that character that makes her stand out in a positive role model sort of way, if that makes sense. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think this is really just Cameron trying to save face and be like, yeah, see, look, I can do females too. Look at me. But I think it's him going back to the exact same well of characters who have no real depth and characterization to them. I kind of actually like Sarah Connor in the first movie. She had a little bit more vulnerability, but it was more of like I'm in a scary movie, so I'm going to like stab the thing and then run, rather than like, here's why I'm a powerful character that can stand up with the best of the men. So we'll see. I don't know what to make of this film. I have excitement. I'm even excited about the 3D because James Cameron actually does 3D pretty well, but I don't know. I really don't with this movie right now. I'm just hoping it's better than Genesis, like you said. So.
Oh, anything's better than Genesis.
Most things are. All right, let's move on to number 2 here. So at number 2, it's a big conversation about Sonic the Hedgehog. So first of all, what have you heard about Sonic the Hedgehog so far, and are you excited for it?
Well, video game movies don't exactly have the best track record.
Now, what if I told you it's a video game movie that's half CGI, half live action?
That sounds like a terrible idea.
It was kind of a trick question because I was expecting you to go, oh yeah, now that you mention it, it's kind of good. But no, even that, like, the more I thought about it, I was like, oh man, that's going to worry me too. But then you start to look at some of the positives about it. The fact that Tim Miller's attached to it, and what a great job he did with Deadpool. The fact that you've got such great names like Jim Carrey and James Marsden attached to this, which I'll be honest, Jim Carrey sometimes does not pick great roles. And, we all saw Mr. Popper's Penguins, or we didn't see Mr. Popper's Penguins. But the fact of the matter is I think Jim Carrey knows how to pick good roles for the most part. And with James Marsden, he's been on a good track record too, whether it's Westworld or the films he's been doing. And then I started to see some of the imagery that came out. And I think that at its very worst, it'll be just another video game film. And at its best, it might be one of the best we've ever seen. And I actually have some confidence in this because I've seen like the sets, I've seen what they're doing with Jim Carrey and James Marsden already. And then we got the announcement that Ben Schwartz is going to be playing Sonic, or I should say doing the voice of Sonic. So most people would know him as the guy who played John Ralphio in Parks and Rec. I think he's a really funny guy. I heard some of the voice snippets of what he'll probably end up doing for the voice of Sonic, and it really does sound good. I can't speak to the CGI, but they've done movies now, like Smurfs, for example, that even though I'm not going to say it was the best interpretation of Smurfs you've ever seen, it did really well at the box office, and a lot of people ended up liking it. So I think that they could do something great with this. Will it blow people away? No, probably not. But
no.
It has to do better than like Yogi Bear did, right?
Oh wait, all of the really bad references. Jesus. Yeah, I definitely think it'll do better than Yogi Bear, but live action and CGI, especially with a video game movie, tends to not work out as well as you would think.
I mean, okay, so let's be honest about this. It can be done, but it's a really bad percentage rate, working against it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about even Deadpool, a lot of that, they had CGI and stuff like that. And it looked really good too. I mean, the way that they've done Spider-Man in the Spider-Man movies, he actually looks really good. They animated the eyes, and that could have looked really bad, but they made it work and look really good. So I'm not totally against this. I really think that, if they had done an animated film completely, it probably would have been better. Like the rumored Mario Brothers movie that they want to do, that would be all animated. I think that probably would have been the better way to go. But I don't know. I still just have enough faith in Tim Miller and what he does that I think that the things I'm hearing are more good than bad. But yeah, we've seen the track record with these sorts of movies, so I don't think it's working in its favor by any means by making it live action and CGI. So, do you like the casting so far, having Jim Carrey, Ben Schwartz, and James Marsden in this thing?
As long as Jim Carrey doesn't paint.
You know what? I actually think his paintings are halfway decent. They're
halfway okay, and then some of them are just really not good.
He's a very artsy kind of guy. He just really likes to go for it. Like, he's got his free expression, I mean, he's not George Bushing it where it's just like, I made another painting of Jay Leno or another painting of another person. Like, he really gets out there and tries to, express himself. And
yeah, exactly. He takes a little bit of a chance with what he does. So yeah. I do give him that.
Yeah. Even if they're not all hits, kudos to him for trying at least. Yeah, I mean, that's really it with Sonic. I wanted to throw that one in at number 2. Actually, I think you wanted to bring this up though, but Smash Brothers, we got a little snippet of Smash Brothers, and since Sonic is kind of tied up in that world as well these days.
Oh yeah, so I think the trailer came out a day or 2 ago.
Yeah, they had it's Nintendo Direct where they announced some of these big things for
So what they did is they announced, technically they announced 3 new characters. 2 of the new characters are from Castlevania. It'll be, I think it's Shane Belmont.
No, Simon.
Simon Belmont, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
And, it's Simon.
Simon and Richter.
Simon and Richter, that's it.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting, though, and I found this out yesterday because I had to follow up on the video after I was watching it. Actually, Richter is going to be an Echo character. So, like, when you have Princess Peach and Daisy, they're kind of the same, just like some of their like waving to the crowd, like those kind of actions, or their color palette are swapped, but their moves are going to be the same. So that's fine because they're both from Castlevania. I get that.
Yeah, I think Richter has like a slightly quicker movement or something like that. It's something very like small though.
Oh yeah, they're very subtle differences between them when they're echoes like that. The other thing I heard is that with his reach and everything, that Simon I think is like the highest jump or something like that, or the longest reach of any of the characters in the game. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. Mm-hmm. That being said, there was another character that you were telling me about too. Which was the other one?
So at the very end of the trailer, they announced King K. Rool,
which I think a lot of people have been asking him for years. But are you surprised that they finally did it?
Anytime you add any of the weird characters from Donkey Kong, it's a win.
I agree. I actually kind of thought that because there is a leak sheet that's on, I think it was Reddit or 4chan or one of those sites that kind of said that every single month they're going to announce, this codename character. So there's one that's out there that says like Pigtails. There's another one that says Old Man. There was another one that said, I think it was like Soldier and some of these other ones. So, I mean, honestly, this could be some nobody on the internet just going like, hey, I picked some random words and, oh, look it's Cranky Kong. That fits the Old Man category, and doing that sort of thing where it's just like totally BS guesses and just kind of going like, oh, this is what I had said the whole time. That's what I was talking about. But I don't know. Do you take any stock in those sorts of rumors when they drop?
Sometimes. A lot of, video game news is very secretive. A lot of developers don't want, concept stuff getting out, or, real or true behind the scenes stuff to get out, like, things that happen behind closed doors at Bungie with Destiny and various other games that had troubled development cycles and whatnot.
You know what? Actually, that's very true, because at the time of Injustice 2 being launched, they said that for DLC characters, they read through detailed code file and that sort of thing, and boom, so and so appears, and it's just as the code file said. So I'm not saying it's out of the realm. I just feel like that, with Injustice 2, like some of those were more specific and they nailed it. Whereas these ones are just like, well, I've got a man who plays with bungee cord or something like that. And sure enough, like it's very, actually it probably would be less specific than that, where it's just like man who stands tall. Like, I guess that's Snake, like you could take a million things from this broad characterization that could be the code file or could be BS. Yeah. So just wanted to throw that in there. Let's move on to number 1, which is a whole lot about Disney and kind of the Star Wars world of it all. So first of which, I want to bring up this whole Oscars thing. Have you heard what the Oscars are going to do this year?
I heard about it, and I think it's...
you can say it, good or bad.
I don't want to say stupid. I think... it's a category of convenience.
Okay, so I see this in 2 ways. So the report is that the Oscars are trying to make some changes to the way that they do their programming. And the most interesting thing that's going to be added to the Oscars when the next one comes is that there's going to be a quote-unquote popular category there. The popular category essentially is like what you've seen probably in a lot of other less reputable kind of award shows, where it's, best film for whatever, and then it's the one, or like the People's Choice kind of thing, where it's like the people have decided that this is a good movie rather than like an established critic and film set of representatives who are actually going like, this is qualified because of blah, 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 and it is truly the best movie of the year. In this case, they're saying like Black Panther was the most popular movie of 2018, so let's give that thing an award. And I had a whole conversation on Twitter with someone, and actually big thank you to the people who were like kind of on my side, because I knew I was going to get myself in some controversy here, because a lot of people were defending Black Panther, and I said, okay, hold on. This is a 3-way viewpoint on this one, because when it comes to movies, it's something I said even with Black Panther. Actually, I really enjoy Black Panther. Do I think it is a best film of the year candidate? No, especially with how bad the CGI was, the fact that it was weak in very separated points throughout the film. I thought Ulysses Claw was a very weak villain and a very extra point to that film. And I don't want to get rambly about that, but I looked at it, as I look at with most films, there's 3 ways of going about it. Is the film good? Is the film popular? Or is it a quality film? And those are 3 different things. Good is perception based on like, did I like this? Was this enjoyable? Is this popular? What does the mass consensus say about this? And then is it quality? Is it like when you bullet point it down to what happens throughout the course of the film, does it have all the quality makings of a film like, Citizen Kane or Gone with the Wind or something like that? Something that people look at, 20, 30 years down the road as like cinematic excellence. And I don't think Black Panther, for this particular example, has that. I do think it has a fantastic performance by Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger. I think it has a very solid set of performances from the supporting cast of Black Panther. Do I think Black Panther is very strong? No. Do I think the story is very strong? Not really. But I like the narrative that they have there, and I love what Killmonger brings to the table because it makes you think about the struggle between, the world of disparity versus the world of, wealth and high stature. So can I put that in that best film or category? No. But could I put it in popular? Absolutely. Because it was so heavily praised and talked about by all different walks of life. And I think that it was a very fun and enjoyable movie that could easily go into that popular category. And do you think that the popular thing could have any positive effects for any movies going forward?
No.
Okay, fair enough. I do look at it as a good thing. I just don't think it's good for the Oscars. Like the idea that you have a really well-beloved movie get that level of recognition, great. But I think the Oscars was always viewed in this level of like, we're better than, with all due respect, like the Teen Choice Awards perspective of it all, where it's just like, we all really like Captain America because he did that one thing with his shield. Wah! And now it's...
the Oscars are the creme de la creme. I mean, like, that's like...
Yeah.
Like, the best examples of, cinematography, acting.
Yeah.
All the little important parts, like the FX, the sound.
Yeah.
Set design, costume design.
Yeah.
I think throwing in the most popular film. The most popular films aren't necessarily always great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I get why they do it because, the interest in award shows is continually waning year after year. Like, I can't even tell you the last time I saw like an MTV music or a video award show. And I say that somewhat jokingly, but I kind of mean that as well because I was getting bored of the normal award shows, not because they weren't meriting, attention by any means, but at least you could be like, oh, well, at least I could see this person, some artist that I really enjoyed do a little set of their music in between all the awards. And there was something fun to that perspective. Like, oh, I get to see, I don't know, Green Day kill it on stage for one special performance or whatever. There was something to it there, but I don't even watch those anymore because it's kind of become more tedious to go through these things now. And it's not that I have any disrespect for the awards part of it all. But, I just felt like I was watching a lot of these movies that while I probably will end up watching them at some point down the road, and in some cases it's actually encouraged me to see better films, there are a lot of times where I'm just going, okay, I don't care about this film. I don't care about this film. I don't care about this film. Let's get to the good one. And I wonder if the perspective from those who run the Oscars is similar to that, where they're like, well, we need to keep people entertained, so let's make this popular category. But
it does coincide with Oscars viewership declining the last 5-6 years.
Exactly. And I'm sure that's why they did this. Another fun point to add on to this too, is that there was a report that who else but ABC pushed for this sort of category to be added into the Oscars because they run the show when it's televised. So they have a little bit of sway with how it's presented. And who would ABC happen to be represented by, Brad?
Mickey Mouse.
Yep. Exactly. So Disney. So it's leading a lot of people to think that this is Disney/Marvel's way of going, oh, look at Warner Brothers and DC. They're actually getting awards for their movies. Marvel's trying to one up themselves in this category and try and go oh, well, look at how many awards we're getting because they got the popular category. And, I don't really want to make it the Marvel versus DC thing, but at the same time, if your movies are good enough, they're going to get the awards that they deserve. We all know that The Dark Knight got famously snubbed for, a lot of great things that were going on in that movie, whether it was the cinematography or some of the actors' portrayals in that film. the reality is, you know, if it doesn't deserve it, it doesn't get it. And that's just the reality of it. And I don't think that Black Panther necessarily, or you could say Infinity War, you could say a whole myriad of different films. It doesn't really matter whether it's Marvel or DC. There's a whole bunch of films that, while I personally love them, I don't think that they should be best film of the year, because I don't think any, well, I guess you can make the argument for The Dark Knight or maybe a couple along the way, but on the whole, you know, superhero movies aren't cinematic excellence from beginning to end. Like there's a lot of silliness, there's a lot of ridiculous scenarios, and, you know, some, you know, kind of not so great acting along the way too. And I say this as someone who loved the Green Lantern movie and would praise it regularly. I can accept the fact that they're not cinematic excellence. And I think that's the deviation that we need to set apart is popularization of a brand or an entity or a film, whatever, worthy of being in cinematic excellence category. And that's really where the tricky area lies. I personally don't agree with this. I think that if you put it on anything else, it probably would have been fine. Although ironically, I hold the Academy Awards higher than the Oscars, but I still don't think that this is something necessary for the Oscars to stand out. Anywho, there's some more Disney stuff here. That's a little less contentious, but we got to move into some Star Wars territory here. So the first thing is that we know now that Star Wars is beginning their shooting for Episode 9. Are you ready for it?
I hope it retcons The Last Jedi.
Actually, I think it was JJ himself that said in just an article today.
He's not really. I don't think he's retconning much of anything, really.
No, nothing. He said, I saw. I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically said that I saw nothing wrong with it. I'm just going to continue the story on from where it was at. So, in some respects, yes. Could they go and make some changes to that? Sure. But I think, honestly, he's just going to continue on. Whether that means it evolves the characters in a certain way where, you know, even though the revelation was that Rey didn't have any specialness to her, so to speak, maybe something comes out that she does. And we find that out in the final film. Will that probably happen? I'm going to say no. But I'm trying to give you some glimmer of hope so that you can be excited for Star Wars again. But I really think that whatever comes of Episode 9, it's still going to be divisive no matter what. I think we, at this point, need to kind of just accept that, because whether you loved Episode 8 like I did or not, or you're like Brad on the other side, you know, I felt the way that Brad did with Episode 7, and I didn't really enjoy it. And I thought, oh, this is going to be the end of Star Wars. And then Episode 8 came out and I loved it. And I think, if nothing else, this speaks to the impact of Star Wars as a whole. Like, I think, going back to my conversation that I bring up from time to time about talking with Warner Brothers, one of the things that I really gathered from that conversation was the fact that it's something I had always kind of talked about or listened to and spoken about in the past, the idea that controversy is such a powerful tool, especially in today's day and age. The fact that people are talking about something as opposed to not talking about it at all is better than pretty much anything, especially because that divisiveness carries it so much longer than the expectation for that film or that property should have been in the first place. Like, there's so many movies that have come and gone and you just never really hear about them just because they're fine. You know, they're just very serviceable, and that was that. But think about how much we've talked about Batman v Superman since before it came out to the present day. Like, we're still talking about that movie, that or Justice League, even for that matter. And like Zack Snyder of all of it. And why? Because it's such a divisive thing that people either really love it or they really hate it. And that divisiveness has carried it on. And I think that speaks to the popularity of these characters and why they matter so much. Whether you love Episode 7 or you love Episode 8 or you love the prequels or you love the original trilogy, something about you as an individual loves something so deeply about the series that you're willing to passionately fight for it, negatively or positively, that no matter what happens when episode 9 comes out, someone's going to feel strongly one way or another about it. And, you know, at this point, I just say brace for impact. But, you know, it's going to be what it's going to be, and I just hope that it makes as many people as it can happy. You know, do you think that with JJ behind, it will probably make it something that you're going to like more, at least?
Either he'll redeem this new trilogy and make 9 good, or he'll just bring a swift end to this terrible trilogy. Either way.
Okay. Because if nothing else, maybe this will make you feel slightly better. I'm actually worried about episode 9, if I'm being totally honest, because like they're bringing back Leia, they're bringing back Luke, and
there are a lot of factors that bring a lot of question marks that I don't know how you're gonna, I guess, properly implement Leia, especially if they're using possible footage they didn't use for The Last Jedi.
Now, the Leia thing could be done right if they really know what they're doing with it. I don't know what that footage is. I don't know how they plan to use it. It could just be stuff with her on the ship that just never got used, and if it's like, fire the torpedoes or whatever, and then something.
All I gotta say is if they use CGI Leia from what is it, Rogue One?
Okay, sure.
That's not gonna fly.
With you or with anyone? Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at that. Yeah. No, I think they've learned after, especially that movie, that the Uncanny Valley thing is not the way to go unless you can absolutely nail it, like they've done with the Marvel
even
movies.
Even with Tarkin in that movie, like there were parts where it looked good, and then there was another part where it looked really bad.
I think it actually, and this is something I've tested, is when you put it on a big screen, you notice it more, I think. And when you put it on a small screen, you notice it less. Because I was watching it on my in my bedroom TV, and I didn't really notice. I was like, oh, that actually looks really good. And then I put it on my big, 55-inch in the living room, and I'm watching. I was like, yeah, it doesn't look as good. I mean, it still looks good, but yeah, I could see the uncanny valley of it all. So, nevertheless, I think that we're probably going to get something that divides people again, because I think people haven't really gotten over episode 8. And whether you felt one way about it or another, there's going to be people that are just going to be strong-willed about it no matter what. So we'll see. It'll come out, and we're all going to have our own feelings about it, and we can't wait to react about it and tell you guys what we think. The last thing I want to bring up is that, we've mentioned the whole Disney streaming thing. That they've got the new service. I think we announced that it was going to be called Disney Direct. We have yet to hear any follow-up confirmation on that, which means they might be pulling that name. That being said, though, with the new streaming, we do know that the Marvel movies are all going to be coming over when it launches, which looks like it might be closer to the end of 2019 or 2020. But the Marvel movies will all be coming over. And we have some little tidbit of an announcement, because this all came out of a little boardroom meeting where they're all talking about the future of Disney and what they're going to do. They appointed a new director to the whole streaming aspect of their company. They're really going gung-ho with this. But what's interesting is that they've got Jon Favreau doing that Star Wars movie or series that we've talked about before. And they're giving him one of the highest budgets that they've had for a TV series, $100 million to make a Star Wars series for their streaming show, for their service. Yeah. So what do you make of this, Brad? Do you think that Star Wars is going to really come back on the TV side of things? Or, well, what do you make of Jon Favreau coming in to do this?
Well, the large budget suggests either A, they're giving him ample amount of money to use whatever, rendering engine or animation style that is the best that they can, possibly afford. Or two, depending on the voice talent they are trying to acquire, we may see some pretty famous voices in this then.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing that I wanted to bring up as well, is the report is that it's going to be based on the Mandalorians after the fall of the Republic. So it could be a very interesting story. I don't know if that means Jedi are going to be involved in what comes out of this new show or not, but I'm not sure if it justifies the $100 million budget necessarily. But again, we've seen what Jon Favreau can do with a much smaller budget and a smaller network backing him. Like, I talk very positively about the Shannara Chronicles when it came out on Spike and then ultimately the Paramount Network. But I really thought that it was going to be a big deal. And even though it didn't really take off the way that I wanted to, it was met with critical praise. And then it was also a very beautiful show to watch, given the limited budget that they had. And I love the CGI. So I think that if you give the guy more money to work with and a better team and a better studio to help make this dream come to life, I think that he's the right guy to give $100 million to, even if that number is pretty darn steep. Now let's compare that towards what Amazon is doing. I believe it's $100 million over on Amazon trying to make the Lord of the Rings come to life. Do you think that one has a better chance for success than the other?
I would really like to see how both of them pan out.
Yeah.
To start.
And we will see very soon. So, yeah, I think that is pretty much all for Disney and for miscellaneous that we have for this week. We're going to cut to a quick commercial break, and we will be right back to talk about the future of DC.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
This week's sponsor is Loot Crate. For less than $20 a month, Loot Crate gives the geek in you a special treat with each box. Loot Crate is a subscription box service with more than $40 worth of geek, gamer, pop culture gear, collectibles, apparel, etc. You'll have until the 19th at 9 p.m. Pacific to subscribe and receive this month's crate. And when the cutoff happens, that's it. It is over. So head to lootcrate.com/nerdrage and use the promo code NERDRAGE to get 10% off your crate today.
And now, on with the show.
And we're back. All right, so we're just going to knock this one out here. Wanted to talk about this real quick. So I wanted to discuss with you, Brad, and maybe have a larger discussion with our fans listening about what to expect with DC going forward. Now, granted, I know some things that I can't say, but for the most part, I think we can talk very openly about what DC's phase 2, for lack of a better word, is going to be. And I wanted to go over some of these things that have been announced just recently and see what your overall take on it's going to be and if you're excited for it. So, first of all, we found out that they're going to try and do a Supergirl movie. Initial thoughts on that? I mean, would you like to see a Supergirl movie?
God, they really love to do TV and movie characters at the same time. That just very confusing if you're just normal public people that aren't huge DC fans.
I want to bring this up because I wasn't sure if you were going to say this, but I'm glad you did. I find this so ironic because for the longest time, I kept hearing people say, oh man, I hate the fact that I can't get Green Lantern on the small screen. He just has to be on the big screen. They could do so much more if they made it episodic because he could go to here and do all this stuff. Or, why does Deathstroke not get to be on Arrow because they're doing a movie about Deathstroke? Why is that the thing? And then when they finally do that sort of thing, like they started with The Flash doing it, like, oh, we got a movie and we got a TV version, and now they're going to do it with Supergirl. I'm hearing this response from people. So do you genuinely not like the idea of two characters existing in the live action space at the same time?
I mean, it opens it up to have two different interpretations, but at the same time, would you like it if... Let's see. What's a perfect example?
If you were going to say X-Men, I'd say give me as many X-Men and as many different platforms.
Oh, I mean, X-Men. There's a ton of. Here's the thing. Also, there's a lot of different stories you can tell with various characters.
Right.
But with Supergirl, how many people have ever played Supergirl? Is it just Carol Danvers? Right.
Well, Carol Danvers is obviously her human form, but or her alter ego. But yeah, having Melissa Benoist play it is great. But they also had the one from I want to say the late 80s. That movie that came out, even though it was very much kind of a sleeper film and not as good as maybe like the Superman movies.
I mean, strictly from the comics, is there ever any other like person that's ever been Supergirl?
Oh no, it's always been well, unless okay. I mean, you could say Power Girl, but that's kind of an Earth 2 thing. It's whatever. Okay. It's essentially the same character, just a different upbringing, for lack of a better word. Yeah. So yeah, Supergirl's always been basically Kara Danvers. So, or Kara Zor-El.
I don't know, it's weird having different interpretations of the same character going on at the same time.
Yeah, I could totally understand that. I mean, I see where you're coming from with that. I think this might be a bigger conversation that's going on with what we're going to be bringing up is I don't necessarily know what makes today's fan happy. Like, I remember when we were kind of coming up with all this, like, I still remember being in the Tinseltown, the Cinemark Theater in Kenosha growing up, and I saw that banner for X-Men. I was like, they're doing how many heroes? And it's going to be in one film? Like, I lost my mind. And that was like, you know, that was like a wet dream of like, holy crapness that you never would have thought was going to happen. And now we're at this point where we're like, oh man, 2 Supergirls. Why do we have to have 2 Supergirls? And I'm like, I'm just happy that they exist at all, you know?
Yeah.
Will the movie be good? I have no idea. And will it actually hurt the TV version in some respects? Couldn't tell you that either. But I just love the fact that they feel confident enough now, because we lived in a world for so long where it was like, it's got to be, well, we can't even have superheroes. If we do, it's going to be like 1 a year. And then it got to a point where like, oh, we're going to have like 2 or 3 a year. And then from there, it was like, oh, we can actually have a woman and a black character, and they can actually have their own stuff. Now we've got characterizations on TV, movies, all that stuff. And they're like, we're going to do a Supergirl movie. And people are like, no, we don't want a Supergirl movie. I'm like, why? Why can't we have a Supergirl movie? Anything's got to be better than the one from the 80s. Because that movie, I wanted to like that movie so bad, even when I was younger, because I got Superman 2 and then Supergirl that my uncle burned on a VHS tape for me at one point. Really staticky, not good copies, but I remember those movies so well because it's all I had. And I still remember Supergirl being really bad, like her getting like this giant light post and then using it technically as like a magic staff to block the witch's magic that was being thrown at her or whatever. And like, it's a really weird movie. And yeah, Supergirl does get involved with magic from time to time, but like, I want a good Supergirl movie from beginning to end, something that's very authentically Supergirl. And if DC believes enough in it, I think that's great. On the other side of that coin, I reiterate what I said before with our DC talk is I don't think this constitutes the base level of DC heroes that this should expand to. I think unless this is somehow an offshoot from what we saw in Man of Steel, like, you know, when they were talking about the open pods and all that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when he's in the Kryptonian ship, there's the pod that's opened up recently or whatever. And some people speculated that could be Kara, who had left sooner and all that stuff. That would be a cool way to explore her adventure from that point and keep it connected to the universe. And I would actually really love to see that. But at the same time, if you're just going to be like, this is going to be Supergirl's story, it's going to have nothing to do with the rest of the DC universe. Who even cares about Superman at this point? We're going to give you Supergirl. I'm going to be upset because I think really, you know, going back to what we were saying about Batgirl is if you don't do Batman, what is the point of Batgirl to start the whole thing off? Like, you get the idea for some of these characters based on the character that they came from initially. Like, you know, we were talking with Venom. Like, I have come to accept the fact that Spider-Man's not involved in it, but for more comic purist types, that white spider logo that's on Venom's symbiote body or whatever comes from the interaction with Spider-Man first. And the broken up sequence where he doesn't interact with Spider-Man at all in this has a lot of fans upset because they're like, you're not being authentic. You're not giving something that's true to the comics. So then why are we bothering with this film? So where do you stand on it? Would you rather just have a movie come out and just be like the best interpretation for that character with no continuity or no connection to another hero? Or would you just rather it all be starting at the base level and then growing out slowly but surely?
I would rather have a Supergirl movie be made to be a good movie. I don't want it to try to connect to anything anymore.
Okay.
Like, I don't even like, so from the, like, say, like, for instance, like the trailer for Aquaman, I didn't pick up on any, tie-ins to Justice League or any other, DC property at the moment.
And that's a conscious effort actually made by James Wan, which I respect that.
So I think if, to take a page out of Wonder Woman, out of Aquaman's book, just tell a story that is a good Supergirl story.
Yeah.
Don't try so hard to have it connect to, other DC movies. Don't have it, try to differentiate it from the TV counterpart.
Right. Yeah. And I think it will. I mean, they're going to give it a better production budget, probably a way different suit. I mean, it's probably going to stand out whatever happens with it, no matter what. And while I agree with the Wonder Woman and the Aquaman thing, those are what I would consider the base level characters. Those are the ones that you do start off with when you want to create that bigger universe, whether they're independent or not, because Wonder Woman was still pretty connected to Batman v Superman and Justice League. It was the tail end of one and the beginning of another. But at the same time, I see what your point is, though, and I agree with that. That's the way it should be, is like you build these with not trying to think about like how is this thing connected to another thing. You just make that movie good, and then you move on from there. So from Supergirl on here, I wanted to talk about the Black Mask, Birds of Prey kind of thing that we had brought up in our scoop earlier. What do you make of a movie like that? Do you think that if that movie is, kind of standalone, doesn't involve any sort of Batman to it, do you think that that's going to be a good movie? Is that a movie that you would want to see?
I think it is going to be a dumpster fire.
Well, there you go. Well, see, that one's not connected. And do you think, so you think that that's going to be...
There are 5 or 6 main characters that you have to flesh out in 2 hours and 15 minutes, 2.5 hours.
Let's see. You got 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4, maybe 5. Because Cassie Cain is going to be a little kid. She will eventually get the Batgirl mantle down the road, but she's going to be a kid in this movie that they're trying to save.
Like this is Suicide Squad all over again, to me personally.
Yeah, it's a little less on the characters.
It's a fun concept for DC comic fans.
Right.
I don't fault DC comic fans who are like, oh, this is a really cool idea. Everybody else, like the majority, 60 to 65% of people who have never even heard of Birds of Prey are like what do they even do?
Exactly. The idea that they're basically female kick-ass kind of martial artists with a couple bits of weaponry, that's kind of the hook to it all. And plus it's an all female driven kind of film. So there's that perspective to it as well, which I think is good.
I think it's good. I don't want that. I don't want Birds of Prey to be sacrificed to just make an all female hero cast.
Right. Cause despite the fact that I don't think Marvel has done a good job in terms of being diverse, and before I get butchered by every Marvel fan out there. Yeah. Yes. Okay. You gave Falcon a chance to be a part of the universe, and that's great. And I think that's what they needed. And the reality is they have diversity within their films, but in terms of putting those diverse characters out in front, the way that DC is at least trying to do, some more successful than others, I think there's a difference there. And I respect both companies for their perspective on it, because I think Marvel is like, hey, we're going to put out what's right for the characters and this universe going forward. You know, even you can make the argument about Guardians of the Galaxy kind of being like a weird offshoot, but they found a way to make it all kind of come together in a way that feels very authentic and right for the tone of their universe. Whereas with DC, they did a lot of the more out there kind of ideas where it's like, okay, well, we did Man of Steel. That didn't garner a whole lot of interest. So we're going to bring Batman and Superman together. And then we're also going to bring in Wonder Woman. You know, by default, if nothing else, we can say, oh, we've got a woman or the first female superhero in it. So that's going to be awesome. But we can also say, if that doesn't work, we've got Batman and Superman coming together. So there's a default of that's going to be awesome. And then if that doesn't work, we've got Harley Quinn and Joker in one movie. We're doing Suicide Squad. That's going to be great. But instead of doing a Batman movie first, that probably explores why Joker is important and why Harley Quinn is important in this universe. You went for the gusto with all this stuff. It was like, we're going to show you all this cool stuff. Our universe exists, but you didn't give people the time to slowly build up why they care about that. Some people are already invested, and you can also kind of debate the idea of like the love that people have for these characters might spread to people that they tell, like, oh my gosh, I love the Joker from this comic because of blah, 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 blah. And that's why Jared Leto's awesome in said person's opinion. But if that person doesn't get anything more than your energy of why you love that from when they see Jared Leto on screen, they're not going to love it just because you love it. They have to love it for themselves. And that comes with personal investment into that character. And I don't think they took the time to do that with a lot of their characters. That being said, I still love what DC's done. I still enjoy the movies. But I don't think that in the case of Birds of Prey, that's right for what DC needs to be doing to course correct, for lack of a better word. Because it felt like up until this point that's what they were doing. They're like, okay, we're going to have some big hitters. We're going to have Aquaman. We're going to have Shazam. We're going to do another Wonder Woman movie. We're going to get to Flash and Batman, and we're going to do that. And we're going to get these all out there so we create, the individual movies for the Justice League. And God forbid they actually do that Green Lantern movie, which is where kind of James Gunn comes in, but because he might do it now. But we didn't even get to talk about that tonight, so it doesn't matter. The whole point, though, being that the idea that Birds of Prey comes out and it's this big thing but has little payoff in the long run is going to be really disappointing for DC's box office. So I hope they take the time to work on this sort of thing and they develop going forward. But I wanted to ask you, in terms of like when you hear news that The Flash is going to be coming in 2019 and so is the Batman, does that give you hope that the universe is going in a better direction at least?
Maybe. We haven't seen anything from the Batman movie. We haven't seen anything from the Flash movie. If they're coming in 2019, what, mid to late 2019, probably?
No, they're going to start shooting in spring of 2019, so early 2019.
Oh, they're going to start shooting. Okay.
Yeah, so if you saw either of them, you might not get it until the end of 2019 or the beginning of 2020. So... yeah, that's high expectation.
Man, I just really hope that DC's learned a very hard lesson on how to treat their comic book properties.
I think they have, if I'm being totally honest.
I hope they have.
I don't think they've learned all the lessons, because I think there's still some WB executives who are going, hey, what we can make a lot of money on? Separate Joker film.
Oh God!
It won't be connected.
Cocaine Joker.
Yeah, we'll do a Cocaine Joker film. It'll get all the Oscars. It'll do great. It'll be fantastic. And then I'm going into Trump mode here. But yeah, the whole thing. I think that's really fun though. Is that they actually are trying to make Flash and Batman exist in this universe as individual movies. So hopefully it works out great. I really do think that that's the way that they should be going. Personally, I hope that Joker gets canned for whatever reason someone wants to come up with. Oh, they couldn't get the budget together, or Birds of Prey couldn't come together because too much in-house fighting, and they couldn't get all the actresses together the way that they wanted to, or something silly like that.
The actresses were tearing each other apart. I don't know.
Because, once you get Flash off the ground, and once you get Batman off the ground, with the Flash, you could do something crazy where you're like, you know what? We started to slowly build this up. Now, after, a second Flash movie, you've got the Rogues, which is basically like the Sinister Six of Flash's villains. And like they have their own comic book storylines and stuff like that, where they're almost like anti-heroes, but they're villains at the same time too. Like you could do their own little Sinister Six-y kind of movie, but you can do that after you make Flash a real commodity and you've developed these characters out first. But you start at the core. Same thing with Batman. If you want to do Nightwing, if you want to do Batgirl, if you want to do Birds of Prey or Gotham City Sirens, or I'm droning on with all the options you could do off of Batman, but you establish Batman first, because no one has the idea to be a bat-like character if Batman isn't established first and foremost, I'm Barbara Gordon, and I was just sitting around in my dad's office one day, and I thought, you know what, I'll be Batgirl. Why? No reason. That's the thing I want them to at least establish, not just some random like, oh, there's this guy in town, his name's Batman, I thought I'd just dress up like him. I want them to give it some level of authenticity to the comics and some level of respect to what they do there, because when they show respect to comics, that's when these movies tend to do well. So I guess that's the last of my spiel for all that. Any other final thoughts on DC going forward? Is there anything you'd like to see from them?
Green Lanterns.
Thank you.
Just to float your boat.
Thank you for saying that. You know what? Nothing against James Gunn, because we had our whole conversation, which you guys can go and listen to sometime on 30 Minutes of Life. I really would love to see James Gunn do Green Lantern. Like, I think that would be such a great film. Like, we saw what a great job he did with the Guardians movies. Imagine him with Jeff Johns getting the characters right and helping with the script and all that stuff. Like, they could really just nail a trilogy of Green Lantern films. And nothing would, that and maybe a Hawkman movie, nothing would warm my heart more than just seeing them nail those two characters. But I digress. And thank you for saying that. So that's going to be it for this week, I think. I think we talked enough about all the stuff that's been going on lately. I hope you guys enjoyed that scoop. Feel free to tell your friends. We'll see if it catches on. Maybe we'll start a wildfire, or maybe it'll be a smoldering little fire. But we appreciate you guys sharing our info nonetheless. Thank you for listening, as always. Go and check us out on Patreon, on Facebook, Twitter. As I mentioned before, we're on Spotify and pretty much anywhere else that there's podcast services to be seen. Thank you guys for sharing us on YouTube. I know we don't have any video to correspond with that yet. Brad's working on some cool stuff, which I should have asked you about an update on that one. Do we have an update?
Currently nothing at the moment. Okay,
no worries. We're making that sort of stuff come along as well. But thank you guys for liking and sharing our stuff over on the YouTube stuff, even if, we don't have all that stuff fleshed out yet. But yeah, check out our TeePublic site. If you can support the Patreon, go and support us on Patreon. We really appreciate that. And I think that's going to be about it for this week. So for the Nerd Rage Podcast, I've been Ryan Anderson.
And I'm Brad Learman.
And we will see you guys again next week.
Go, 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 go.